Welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter. I teach you how to start flipping and wholesaling houses. Or if you're already doing a category business, I hope this is working. Whenever I go live on Facebook, I, it's weird what happens in the beginning, whether it's on or not. Okay. So I get this question a lot, and it's about when our closing costs are due. I get this calls also a lot about paying for attorneys, and they're sort of part of the same thing. If you stay to the end, I'll sort of explain to you. Why it's really different in New York, how closing costs are paid, because there's a huge difference in how much closing costs are. Now, the real answer, so first of all, it's either on the purchase or the sale, and we're going to have to deal with both parts of it. Almost all closing costs, if not all, are due at closing. So how does that work? So I usually figure on a purchase, most purchases, I'm going to have about $10,000 in closing costs. What that means is that when I buy a property, I just need to have an extra $10,000. Now, if you're borrowing money, some of those costs are lender costs. Now, lender costs on a purchase, again, we're not dealing with sales yet. We're going to do with purchases first. Lender costs are not going to be, so let's just take an example. If you're taking hard money, right, let's say you're buying a property for $400,000, you're getting a hard money loan of, let's say, $300,000, just to use round numbers. And there's a 2-point lender fee, right? 2 points. So a point is 1% of the loan. So 1% of a $300,000 loan is $3,000. 2 points are $6,000. So the lender is not going to say, hey, give me a check for $6,000. The lender is just going to give you $294,000. They're going to net fund out whatever their costs are. Instead of giving you $300,000, there's a $6,000 fee. They're going to give you $6,000 less. All that means is that on the $400,000, if you thought you were going to bring $100,000 that you needed, now you need $106,000. You need to bring more money. So that's how closing costs are paid at a purchase closing, right? So lender fees are usually net funded out, but then there are title fees, maybe taxes are due. You're going to pay for title insurance. In New York, you're going to certainly have to pay an attorney. So yeah, it's around $10,000 for larger dollar numbers, or for lots of for high tax areas where you may have to pay a huge tax bill that's due, because all the taxes that are due, let's say within 60 or 90 days, they're going to want to pay at the closing. It could be more, right? I've had $20,000 in closing costs on deals. I've had more. If I borrowed money, I could have $25,000 or $30,000, which is crazy numbers. These are numbers that are unheard of in other states, right? In other states, you talk about closing costs of $1,500. In New York, that's not the case. Closing costs are very high. Some of the reasons why closing costs are high in New York on a purchase, or the truth is on a sale too, but we'll deal with sale soon, is that you're going to have a legal fee, right, which $2,000-$3,000 is pretty standard, which is more than the closing cost in total for a lot of other states. Title insurance is expensive, so $2,000-$3,000. Recording fees are a fortune. So if you're recording you don't have to pay for recording a deed when you buy. You have to be recording a mortgage if there's a mortgage, or if there's any other document. Like recording fees in Nassau County are like $800 documents. Insane. So those are typical, right? Also, I'm not even counting a property insurance that's separate. So $10,000 is a good number that I use. I find sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but it's a good number to use. And that's pretty lean as it goes, believe it or not. Now, let's talk about when you sell something. So when you sell something, I usually have more closing costs when I sell something than when I buy something, right? So the biggest component of that is going to be 2% usually to a buyer's agent, right? So I list my own properties. I'm a real estate broker, but very often I have to pay a buyer's agent 2%. That means if the buyer is represented by an agent, they're going to get some of the commission. And what that means is if I'm selling something for $500,000, that's $10,000 in closing costs just to the buyer's agent. I also have any taxes that are due, assuming I didn't make tax payments during the holding period. Any taxes that accrue are going to be due to me then. There are still recording fees, of course. You have to record a deed, right? Because you're paying for a deed to be recorded in. Maybe you pay for a deed recording when you buy. I'm not even sure. At some point, you pay for a deed recording. That's expensive in Nassau County. And you have a legal fee again. So it's feasible that you're gonna. I usually figure out $15,000 to $20,000 cost when I sell. So if you're counting this up, understand that when I wholesale a property, that means I buy it and let's say do nothing to it or do very little to it. It's not unreasonable for me to have $50,000 to $60,000 in costs just to buy it, hold it for a short time if I'm borrowing any money and pay taxes on it, and then to sell it. There are people, most people in other states will look at that and go, "That is freaking crazy," and it is, but it is the way it is, and there's no real way for us to change it. So, although I'm working on something, but it's hard to do. So just to buy something, hold it for a few months until a new buyer gets a mortgage, and then to sell it is expensive. But in general, what will happen on a sale is that'll simply be netted out of your proceeds. So if I'm selling something for $500,000 and I have $25,000 in costs, I'm just going to get proceeds of, what did I say, selling for $500,000? I'm going to get $475,000 in proceeds, right? Minus any liens or mortgages I took on the property. So closing costs are always due at closing, and you almost never have to write a check for it. Now, there are certain costs you do have to write a check for. So if you're borrowing money and the lender is requiring an appraisal, usually you're going to have to write a check for that appraisal beforehand. So that could be $400 or $500. What other closing costs might be due beforehand? I'm trying to think. Some lenders are going to want an application fee if you borrow on the buy, and on the sale, I don't think anything's ever due on a sale until the actual closing. But on a buy, there are certain fees that come up once in a while that someone will want you to lay out. Something, an appraisal, maybe an application fee that a lender asks for you. Those are all lender related. Usually I don't have anything. So here's the big one. The big one that I get all the time is, "Hey, New York, you need an attorney." I don't have $3,000 for an attorney. So here's something important, and I have a seller right now who's using an attorney that I think is a complete disaster. If any attorney asks you for money, you should run, not walk, run from that attorney. Any professional attorney, even if they don't know you, should get paid only if and when the deal closes. Okay? Now, you may say, "Well, what if the deal doesn't close? He's going to do all this work." Let's be perfectly honest. Attorneys don't do that much work on a standard transaction. So the reason why there are no contingencies at all in New York, there's no inspection contingencies in New York, is because an attorney doesn't want. So let me just take a few steps back. So in every other state, a real estate transaction takes place between a buyer and a seller. I want to buy your house. Here's a contract. We're in contract. In New York, a real estate transaction takes place between a seller's attorney and a buyer's attorney. The seller's attorney generates the contract, sends it to a buyer's attorney. They negotiate. Then the buyer's attorney agrees, sends in the contract with a deposit. It gets deposited. Now, what you have to understand is that the reason why there's no so in other states there are inspection contingencies. I go to contract, I have time, right? I'm in escrow for 2 weeks and I can get out of the contract if I want. It doesn't happen in New York because the attorneys that are preparing the contract don't want to prepare contracts where anybody, sorry, my neck's bothering me, where anybody has an easy out. So if there's an inspection, so there are inspections done in New York, but they're done before the contract, and any repairs done are put in a rider into the contract. So every time I go to contract, I have no outs. I have to either assign it or I have to close on it. Those are my two choices. Now, because of this, I know I was making a point here. The attorneys are going to do some work before the contract is done, and contracts do fall out. If an attorney ever asks you for any kind of money up front, that is not a good attorney. That's an attorney that does not do a lot of closings, an attorney who doesn't have any confidence in you and little confidence in himself. Attorneys do get paid at the closing and if it closes. And if the deal falls out, they know they're not getting paid. I have a friend who's a very, is a partner in a big firm. They do deals for investment banks. They had a deal, I remember he was telling me recently, they worked on it for a year and a half. The deal almost died. There were millions of dollars in legal fees. And he basically said something like, if the deal doesn't close, we're not going to get a lot of money on it. A lot of their fees, now in general, the big firms bill hourly, but their fees were tied to the closing. So on a regular standard real estate transaction, both the buyer's attorney and seller's attorney are going to get paid when and if it closes. If it doesn't close, they're not getting paid. And anybody who says, "Hey, you want to give me $250 and give me $300 in case the deal doesn't close," that's a guy you should not use. I'll be perfectly straight up with it. The guy should be experienced enough and confident enough to know that if the deal doesn't close, nobody's happy and nobody wants a legal bill. You get paid when the deal closes. And that is good, right? Because they're incentivized to get the deal closed. You want deals to close. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're interested in a course that teaches how to do what I do, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. If you want information about one-on-one coaching that I offer, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any platform, please click the thumbs up. The likes really help me. And keep the comments coming. I post 5 times a week. I don't always know what to talk about. Any comment is good. It doesn't even have to be about the topic you're watching on the video. If it's a simple answer, I'll just reply. If it's something I've covered before, I'll send you links to videos. And if it's a new question, something I haven't covered in a long time or I haven't covered at all, I'll do a video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching.